Basements. They always tend to be one of the scarier places in the house. Perhaps it's because it's so unnaturally dark down there. Maybe there's an entity long forgotten, wandering around making noises that you can't explain. Or perhaps there's someone down there, waiting, watching, ready to get you. Whatever the reason, it is undoubtable that basements can be terrifying. So without further ado, it's time to go exploring. Get comfortable and let the darkness take control. When I was in 8th grade, my parents separated. Basically, my mum packed her and I up, and we moved into my grandpa's and didn't look back. We ended up living there throughout my high school years when he died. My parents officially got divorced, and my mum remarried, and we moved into the city with my stepfather. My grandpa lived on the first floor of the apartment, and the owners, an elderly couple who were family to us through marriage, lived on the second floor. The property also had a small in-law cottage out in the back where my uncle lived. For some reason that I never understand, there was no lock to get into the actual building if you entered through the back. The back door opened into a landing where there was a locked and deadbolted door to our apartment, and then 2 sets of stairs. One led up to the also locked and deadbolted door of the second floor apartment, and the other led down to the basement, where there was also no lock. Our apartment could also be entered from the front of the building, but in order to access the second floor apartment or the basement, you had to go through this landing. The basement was actually pretty nice, and at one point they had started to convert it into its own apartment, before they ultimately decided to make the in-law cottage instead. So, in the basement there was a full kitchen complete with an oven, sink and refrigerator. The washer and dryer, which was shared by all of us, was also in the basement, as well as just some general storage stuff. The basement was entirely open, except for a back room that was full of storage. It had one of those kind of swinging saloon type doors where you can see what's above and beneath them. The storage area was longer than it was deep, so you couldn't really see anything much behind the doors aside from the shelves. You had to walk in them and turn to really see the room. One night, when I was in high school, and I believe I was around 15 at the time, after taking a shower, I saw the laundry bin in the bathroom was pretty full, so I grabbed a ton of laundry and headed down towards the basement. It was pretty late at night, but I figured I would at least get started and move some things over in the morning. I tossed everything onto the ground and started sorting out colors, when I got hit by a horrible feeling in my gut. The basement was not at all a creepy basement. It was well lit and pretty welcoming with the kitchen and everything, but for some reason that I can't explain, something just started to feel wrong. Anyone who has ever been hit with the feeling that they were being watched knows exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know how or why it came over me, but it was something that I couldn't shake, and I found myself looking over to the saloon doors and the only part of the basement that I couldn't see in its entirety. I don't know why, maybe to just assure myself I was being a big baby, I started to walk towards the back room, but I stopped myself as I reached out towards the swinging doors. I've been a horror fan for as long as I can remember, and had seen more horror movies than I could count, and knew that if I were in a movie, I would be calling myself a dumbass and saying not to go into the back room. I quickly snapped my hand back and ran up the stairs, leaving all of the clothes behind, and into our apartment, where I locked the doors and immediately told my mum that I had just the worst feeling in the basement and that I was super creeped out. Despite me not being the type of person that scares easily, she basically rolled her eyes at me and told me to go to bed. I ended up doing as I was told, though it took me a bit to shake the feeling and finally fall asleep. Later that night, my bladder woke me up, and I stumbled out of my room to go to the bathroom. I didn't turn any of the lights on, as I started making my way towards the bathroom, because it usually woke up my grandpa and I didn't want to bother him. When I got closer to the bathroom, I noticed my mum standing in the doorway of her bedroom, and something looked off, and it took me a moment to realize that she was clutching the phone. She then noticed me and whispered for me to get against the wall, which I did without hesitation. It took a few moments for the grogginess to wear off and my eyes to adjust to the darkness before I could see what she did. My mum's bedroom was immediately off the kitchen. The kitchen was where the back door that led to the landing in the basement was located. The door had a tiny window up top with a small but thick curtain. It was thin enough that you could see someone was outside of the door, but thick enough to not be able to make out any of the features of the person on the other side. But there was someone on the other side of the door, and every now and then the doorknob would move, and you could hear this scratching sound on the other side. I have never been so afraid in my entire life. I'm not sure how I managed to do what I did next. It was like someone else had taken control over me entirely. I slid down against the wall that I was clinging to and started to crawl against it in the darkness towards the kitchen. My mum looked petrified, watching back and forth between me and the back door. She kept whispering for me to stop and go back, but I kept moving forward, low and against the wall, towards the counter, where I carefully grabbed a butcher knife. I was shaking the whole time I moved, with the knife in my hand on the ground next to the fridge, which was next to the door that the man was trying to get into. I had this horrible feeling that I was going to be killed, but if I wasn't going down without a fight. It felt like I sat there forever in the darkness next to the door, with my mum hiding in the bedroom doorway across from me, just waiting. But it was only for a few minutes. My mum had already called 911 before I had woken up, and stumbled my way towards the bathroom. The lights from the approaching squad cars soon filled the kitchen, and from the other side of the door, I could hear a sudden clamoring and commotion, and the slam of the back screen bursting open as the would-be assailant took off running. It was about 3 a.m. when this happened, so it was completely dark outside, and we lived right next to some train tracks and very thick bushes and trees that made it easy for the man to escape the cops that pursued him. The police came in and took statements from my mum and I. My grandpa, who was partially deaf, had managed to sleep through almost the entire thing, until the police came through to search the apartment and make sure that we were all okay. The outside of the door and the doorknob were both covered in deep scratches, like someone had been going at it with a knife, trying to figure out how to get in. But that wasn't the most horrifying part to me. That was reserved for the basement. The clothes that I had brought down were not where I had left them, and they had been thrown about and disheveled, and the back room The one with the swinging door that I had stopped myself from going in. The boxes that were out of view had also been thrown about, all opened, obviously gone through with some things missing, and there were some wrappers from food on the floor. He had been down there looking for something to steal. He was down when I was doing the laundry. I almost had walked into that room. Based on what we had seen on the door, he had a knife. To this day, I can't help but find myself sometimes thinking about what would have happened if I would have walked into that room. Once, when I was about 14, I got home from school and was home alone. I was kind of anxious as a kid, and this was before cell phones were common. It was about 2002. I called my mum at work a lot, and this involved calling the security desk, and they would come and get her off the factory floor. And she told me that I couldn't call her at work anymore because she would get in trouble. Previously, I would call about things like, "When are you coming home?" and just to make up stuff to talk about because I was bored or lonely. So, I get it. Recently, my mum had purchased a big flat-screen TV on credit from Best Buy, and we spent tons of time treating our living room like a movie theatre. We had over 200 VHS tapes, and we lived with my grandma while I was growing up in a basement apartment, and it was a walkout, and had a full kitchen and bathroom, while grandma lived upstairs. I came home on the bus and noticed that my grandma had left the garage door open. She was a little forgetful sometimes, so it was something that she did from time to time. I went straight to the basement from my garage and into my room. I remember looking around. Geez, I thought I cleaned up in here, and it's already a mess. I was a bit of a slob as a kid. When it came to my room, though, I didn't think so much of it. I was only there for a minute before deciding to go watch some TV. I got to the living room, and it was gone. Now, I'm not the brightest crayon in the box when it comes to real-life stuff at this age, so I'm mostly just confused. I honestly believe at this point that the TV is broken, and Mum sent it to Best Buy to be repaired or something. I go upstairs to my grandma's house to use the phone, as our phone line downstairs we can only use for the internet at the time, and I called my mum at work, knowing she's going to be a bit peeved, and she is. It went a little bit like this, after they brought her to the phone. "What is it?" Sorry to call, just wondering, where is the TV?" "What are you talking about?" "It's downstairs where it always is." "No, it's gone." "Is it in the shop?" That's when she got serious. "Are you home alone? Is Grandma there?" "No, she's gone. She left the garage door open when she left." "Oh my God. Go lock yourself in the bathroom. I'm coming home." At this point, I hear footsteps running loudly up our basement stairs. The access to the basement was through the garage, same as the access to the upstairs house. I scream, drop the phone, and run to the back of the house where the bathroom is, slamming the door, locking it, and opening the bathroom vanity drawers, since the door opened inwards and it wouldn't open with the drawers out. My mum called the police and rushed over. Our house at the time was set up in such a way that we shared an entrance with a parking lot, so I'm assuming whoever was robbing us had parked over there, which is why I didn't notice any cars, and they got away so fast. My room was trashed, my mum's room was trashed, and the TV and fishbowl full of change were gone. The scariest part to me was not just that I was downstairs alone with this person, but I was in the same room. The basement was just one bedroom with a huge living room, and my mum had cut the living room in half with a big entertainment centre, which the TV was in front of. But she had no door, only a wide opening to the side. So while I was checking out the TV, someone was on the other side of the entertainment centre, going through my mum's underwear drawer. How do I know? Because they stole all her underwear too, except one pair that were on the stairs when the cops got there. And it wasn't there when I went downstairs when I got home. My mum always thought that it was a woman who robbed us, because she assumed that she took all of her underwear and swimsuits to wear. I don't agree. Although she could have been protecting her own feelings, or mine at the time. The cops never found our stuff, and it took 10 years before my mum got a big TV like that again. My childhood home has been plagued by a dark entity for 20 years, and I firmly believe it's all to do with an American serial killer. My uncle has a very twisted sense of humour. In the late 90s, he gifted all 3 of his siblings, my father and 2 aunts, each a brick that he claims came from the foundations of John Wayne Gacy's crawl space, the very same crawl space where the bodies of 28 victims had been hidden by their murderer. My uncle was a Cook County detective in the days of John Wayne Gacy's serial killer clown murder investigation and trial. He's never told us much about his involvement in any of this, but we know for a fact that he was inside Gacy's house prior to it being demolished in 1974. My family laughed this off, assuming there was no way bricks were legitimate. But since the day Dad chucked the brick into the back of our crawl space, strange and dark things have gone on in our house. I was maybe 9 when the John Wayne Gacy brick entered our home, and a few weeks later, I had decided to build a blanket fort in my bedroom and sleep there for a few nights in a row. One morning, I was up early, just quietly reading and playing a bit in my fort, when I heard someone enter my room. They were heavy footsteps, definite and unmistakable. I grew quiet, confused, because my dad always announced himself when entering any room. I could see the silhouette of a man cast on the wall of my blanket fort as he stood between my sunshine-filled window and the entrance to my fort. My heart began to race and I said, "Dad?" a couple of times, timidly, growing more and more uneasy each time. No answer. So I worked up the courage to peek out of my fort. As I eased up the blanket to look out of the place where the man should have been standing, the silhouette vanished, and I was greeted with an empty room. The window I knew the man had been standing in front of to cast the shadow on my fort was opposite to the door to my room. There was no way that someone that large could have silently left my bedroom. From that day to the age of about 16, I was plagued by events like this. Unexplainable footsteps, a hand grabbing my ankle one night and pulling me out of bed, a hulking, a not quite human-shaped shadow seen frequently by myself, my mother, my sister, and several of our friends in the basement that we have since nicknamed The Thing, and general feelings of unease, heaviness, and outright terror in the corner of our basement near our crawl space. Horrible nightmares / night terrors, the likes of which I have never experienced outside of the house. We had an infestation of flies one summer that lasted for 6 months, with no reasonable cause. No dead animals in our walls, no rotting food being left out, nothing to have initially drawn and subsequently allowed the flies to continue to prosper and reproduce. The exterminator my father called had never seen anything like it. Two separate family dogs that have never known each other and therefore couldn't have picked up behavior from one another. Both would sit at the top of the basement stairs, staring and growling low and deep, threatening protective growls from time to time. These were good, sweet-tempered dogs that I never heard growl outside of those basement stare-down sessions. My sister had her own unsettling experience too. To this day, at the age of 22 and my sister at 29, we still don't go into the basement alone. I think the dark things started to subside around the age of 16 because my mother lost her battle with cancer at the time, in our home, with in-hospice care. I have reason to believe that her spirit became a sort of guardian angel over my sister and I, and kept the thing in the basement under control and away from us. But those are stories for a different time. In any case, my father is getting ready to sell his house. Now that both his children are nearly fully grown and moved out, my sister and I have searched the entire basement, including the crawl space for the John Wayne Gacy brick that we are certain opened a doorway for darkness to enter the home. We don't want the next owners to experience the thing we did as kids. Though Dad says he hasn't even thought about it, let alone moved it since he threw it in the back of our crawl space, we weren't able to locate that brick. Back in 1990 to 1991, I lived in a fairly large house with friends in Lancashire, England. The house was over 3 stories, and the basement used to be a servant's quarter, and the old servant's bell was still attached to the wall. I've always seen things and felt spirits since being really young, but I hadn't really felt anything in the house for months. It was party central most of the time, so there were lots of people coming and going, and music was constantly playing. It was a great place to live when you're just leaving your teenage years and don't have many cares in the world. After a few months of sleeping alone in the basement, I had my first scary encounter. It was so unexpected, I thought someone was playing tricks on me. I was in my room and heard someone shouting my name a few times. After calling back and getting no answer, I searched the other 3 rooms to see if someone was joking around. Then, when walking back into my room, I heard someone say my name right behind me. I stopped, frozen for a second, while all of my senses screamed at me, and I knew 100% I was alone down there. I turned on my heels and ran to the stairs, and then in my peripheral, I saw a black mass moving alongside me on the outside of the staircase. I ran as fast as my deadweight legs could take me, and I was quite literally hysterical. And my friend up the top of the floor instantly knew I'd experienced something terrifying, and I couldn't go back down there alone. I had to have friends come down with me to get my things, as I was petrified. After sleeping on the sofa for weeks, I decided I was going to have to go back to my old room. I just couldn't cope sleeping near the kitchen, and having housemates wake me at the crack of dawn because of their breakfast munchings. I'd been back in my room for a couple of nights, when I heard shuffling coming into the room. I thought it was my friend's old dog, who seemed to like coming down to my room to poo. I told him to leave, but he just ignored me. I called his name and got nothing but silence. I sat up to look around, but he wasn't there. Laying back down, I grabbed my book and tried to dismiss it. I then heard quiet snoring coming from the bottom of my bed, which got louder. It was a deep rattle type of snoring. I sat up and scooped my duvet and marched quickly up the stairs to the sofa. I eventually nodded off and told my housemates the next day. They were trying to find reasonable explanations, even saying the sounds of seagulls could be carried themselves down the closed chimney to the bottom of my bed. And after another week of the sofa, I moved into a room opposite the kitchen. It had a bed sofa and TV. My friend had left, so I was really cozy and felt safe. Weeks passed, and then one Sunday afternoon, I sat watching TV. I could hear someone whistling to the advert tune on the television, and then the advert ended, but the whistling did not. After a few minutes, I started to find the whistling sound annoying. Then it got louder and closer, and was in my room with me. I just freaked out and ran to a friend who was sleeping in the room directly above me. I woke her and asked her to come down to my room with me. She agreed, as she could see how concerned I was. We went back to my room with her boyfriend in tow. The whistling had stopped, and I eventually spoke out and dared to do it again while the others were present, instead of making me seem like crazy and neurotic. After a few minutes it started again, quietly at first, and then it raised in volume, like it had been gaining more energy. My boyfriend's friend swiftly left the room saying, "Sod this," leaving me and my mate staring at each other with blank faces. My friend spoke out, "Why don't you just leave her alone?" Then I realized it was whistling a tune, and my brain scrambled to figure out what it was. My friend stood up, quite scared at this point, telling me to come on, and I said, "No, wait. What is that? Oh my God." It was whistling "Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf." Yeah. That didn't stay after that, and we, my friend, her boyfriend, and myself, managed to move into a vacant flat next door the very same day. A new tenant in the house was very animated and excited to hear what I'd experienced, and said she hoped to see something there. And within a couple of months, she was screaming the house down after she saw a suited man in the basement who leaned against the doorway, folded his arms, and smirked at her. I wish I'd got someone to help her clear the house, as I do worry that someone moving in with children may use the basement as a play area, and I still can't bear to hear whistling near me to this day. When I was 4 years old, my family moved from Philadelphia to a small suburb 15 minutes away. The crime in the city had become unbearable, and with 3 small kids, myself and my 2 sisters who were 7 and 11 at the time, my dad decided it was time for a change. He found a cheap 4-bedroom house and moved us in. I got the smallest room, which was obviously a child's room prior to us moving in. The shirt tail light switch was a dead giveaway. Anyway, about a week in, my parents woke up in the middle of the night and decided to check on us, realizing that I wasn't in bed. They woke up my sisters and started frantically checking everywhere for me, and after searching the entirety of the upstairs of the house, they came down the steps which put you in the dining room. In the dining room, there was a flimsy wooden door leading to the partially finished basement with an unpractically high latch that I could not reach at my 4 years of age, and was always locked, except it was wide open, with no lights on, and the light switch was upstairs, but the light itself had a string that you could pull to turn it on or off that was in the basement. As they made their way down the steps into the pitch black, they could hear me asking questions. "What's your name? How long have you lived here? How old are you?" My dad ran over and pulled the string, and the light turned on, and grabbed me from the corner. I was standing there with my eyes closed, and he shook me. When I woke up, I kept asking where the boy was, the one that I was talking to. I'm 31 and had never sleptwalked before, and never have since. Between then and the time I moved out at around 20, we had numerous unexplainable things happen to not only me, but multiple family members, and even friends sleeping over or visiting. I never really tell people, and don't think about it that much. I have many more strange and downright creepy things that happened when I lived there, but I just don't know where to start when telling them. I have a creepy, unfinished basement that used to be a fruit cellar. It was formerly outside the house, but an addition of a breezeway put the access door inside the house. I have my laundry down there, as well as a ton of storage crap. There are no light switches, just a hanging bulb towards the back of the room. There are cellar doors, then in the breezeway, another door that opens up into the back of the house, which I always keep shut. It used to be an exterior door before the breezeway was added. I keep litter boxes in the breezeway and installed a cat flap that my dog cannot fit through. He can poke his head through, but it's far too large to get any more of himself through. I had to do this because the doggo was constantly eating the cat's shit. Anyway, I always take my dog downstairs with me because it thoroughly creeps me out at night, especially turning off the lights and making a mad dash for the stairs in total darkness. Doggo dislikes the basement as well. He will follow me down there and wait by the foot of the stairs for me to be done. This night was the same as any other. He came down with me. I shut the breezeway door behind us and locked the cat flap, because I don't like my cats getting into the basement. As I was getting my laundry, I was talking to the pup. I even looked up at him a few times and said Gesundheit when he sneezed. Once that I had everything in the basket, I turned off the lights and ran up the stairs. I didn't hear the telltale clicking of the dog's nails on the concrete stairs behind me, and he wasn't waiting by the door to be let back in. This never happens. He hates the basement. He would never stay down there once I left, especially in the dark. I called to him several times, and he didn't come, but I could hear nails clicking around on the concrete floor of the basement, thinking he had to have found something of interest, or he was eating something he wasn't supposed to. I quickly went to open the breezeway door to slide my laundry in and go collect the dog. To my extreme shock, the dog was inside of the house looking at me, with his head poked through the cat door, which I absolutely had locked. No chance in hell he could have beat me up the stairs, unlocked the cat flap, and wriggled through. My significant other still teases me about the ghost dog in the basement, but holy shit, that was an incredibly unsettling experience. I need to point out that the home I used to live in was very old and said to be haunted, down to even the realtor warning us about it. At least 3 people died on the property, 2 within the house itself, and 1 in an old shed in the backyard. We moved to this house when I was young from a nearby town for 2 reasons. 1, my father's job had relocated to a new building, and 2, it was cheap. The property was purchased by my father's boss cheap due to its age, being in a rundown neighborhood and, again, the supposed haunting. As such, we moved in with no money down and very cheap rent. So, those deaths I mentioned? An elderly man died of a severe heart attack in the basement bedroom. At some point, the basement had been rented out as a separate sort of apartment. It was a huge finished basement, and for whatever reason, one of the previous owners moved the only bathtub into the basement bathroom. An elderly lady also passed away in her sleep, peacefully, in the master bedroom, and a middle-aged man killed himself in the large, run-down shed in the backyard. I don't know why or how. As a young kid, I would sometimes hear things moving around in the attic, but no one ever went up there, and since somehow the door in the hallway ceiling led up had been sealed from the inside, no one ever got up there in all our time of being in the house. But other than that, I didn't notice a whole lot. Around the time I was probably 11 or 12, my landlord decided to tear down the old shed in the back. It was falling apart, and my dad had caught me and my friends playing in it often, and worried that it would collapse in on us and hurt us. This, I believed, is what I think stirred things up. Around 13, I decided to move from my upstairs bedroom down to the basement bedroom. I had been sharing a bedroom with my younger brother, and at that age, I simply found it uncool. This is when things started to get weird. I'd regularly feel a sense of dread down there, while alone, and almost constantly felt as if I were being watched. These weren't feelings I'd previously felt down there when I was a younger child, and I'd regularly play down there since it was such a large area. I had pretty regular, vivid, horrific nightmares while sleeping down there, and the two closets down there had felt especially foreboding, one on each end of the basement. Both were huge, and both played a role of why I found it hard to stay a skeptic. The one on the far end was under the stairs to the ground floor, and had a normal door leading to it, like someone's front door. It started shallow, but went deep down horizontally, almost like opening a door into a long, narrow hallway that curved to the right as you stepped inside. We stored holiday items and things in there, and I've had a few wooden shelves along the wall as well. The other closet was a huge bedroom-sized walk-in closet that connected my bedroom to the outside foyer. My mum's wedding dress was hung in there, and my dad's old college hockey gear and skates and sticks and stuff. Several nights I'd go to sleep and shut and lock the sliding folding door to the closet, only to wake up with them unlocked and slightly cracked open. It bothered me, but I tried to downplay it and just carry on. There were at least half a dozen times when I would wake up to being startled by loud crashes from within the narrow closet under the stairs. These instances were harder to ignore. My mother claims to have heard similar things several times while washing clothes down there, or bathing as well. In my mid-teens, I discovered I could sneak friends or girls in down there via the back door that led outside to the backyard. One such night, I had two friends over playing Magic the Gathering, and all three of us heard a series of loud crashes from the closet. We had been sitting out in front of the closet in the foyer, and all of us looked at each other in disbelief, and assured the other we'd all heard it. Upon investigation, nothing was inside the closet, but it looked like it had been ransacked. Late into the same year on Christmas Eve, my mother and I were the only two awake in the house late one evening, working on wrapping up gifts and baking. My mum had just pulled a batch of cookies out the oven when we heard something from downstairs that sounded like a cannon shot and followed by two really loud bangs. This woke my dad up, and he came out the bedroom wide-eyed wielding a baseball bat. My mum explained what little we knew, and then he led the way downstairs after I grabbed my own bat. We thought someone had broken in from the back door. The back door was secure, but the narrow closet door was lying open on the floor across the foyer from the closet. It was splintered, its hinges wrecked, and it had hit a support pillar across the foyer and fell to the floor. This explained the two bangs after the initial one, Again, nothing in the closet, and it again looked as if a tornado had torn through it. One of the shelves was even hanging halfway off the wall. Whatever happened to the door happened violently, because one of the hinges was still hanging off the door frame around the splintered wood. We were never able to explain it. There are honestly several more events that occurred both before and after that I simply can't explain no matter how hard I try. And as a skeptic I've tried, but as I've said, it's harder to remain that way since living in that house. When I was younger, probably about 7, my brother and I had a strange encounter in our basement. We were playing in our basement one day, when out of the blue, I got a weird feeling in my gut. You know, the one where something just feels off? Well, I left my brother on the side of the room and went to go around the corner when I saw this weird swirling thing. I called my brother over and we just stared at it for a minute. We both swear that we saw a swirling black vortex. This vortex to me was also slightly transparent. As soon as we saw this, we noped right out and said to each other that we should get out of our basement. As we got a few steps up, we looked back and thought we saw our black cat looking at us from around the corner. This was not the case. This was not a cat. It was pitch black, had red eyes, and was some sort of monkey. And we ran up those stairs as fast as we could. When we closed the door behind us, we both swear we heard that thing made contact with the door. That is the only experience I've had, but my mum said that she had a dream where she saw a Native American tribe get slaughtered on our property. She said that she felt really upset and apologized to them. She also said that the tribe had something to do with a turtle symbol. Speaking of the Native Americans, we've actually found quite a bit of arrowheads on our property, as well as this weird stone that my dad found in the woods. A stone that looks like it has ears or maybe horns. As a kid, we lived in the remaining half of what used to be a big corner of a bar/general store, and would hear odd noises in the basement at all hours. When I was a few years older, we moved across from a pauper cemetery, and I would see dark shadows form around the corners or skating up the walls. My little brother still claims to this day that he saw a woman standing in the crawl space door calling to him. We built our final house in 2000, and what was once a cornfield that was turned into a subdivision, and I have had more experiences in that house than anywhere else in my life. Every person in my family has seen the woman in white standing in my parents' room, looking out the side window. My dogs will bark and growl and follow something down the hallway for hours. Doors and drawers will be open and they will close by themselves at will, and things love to disappear, only to pop up in locations that would be impossible for it to get to alone. A few weeks ago, I was over visiting for dinner. I put up my cell phone keys and wallet into my hat and put it all on the counter like I did growing up. When I went to leave, my phone was gone, and my siblings and parents all sweared they didn't take it. I called it from the house phone, and it was in the basement. Still no idea how it got there. When I was 15, my older sister and I were the only ones home, and we both heard a door slam in the basement. I ran to the stairway leading down and saw that the bathroom door and the bottom of the stairs had been shut. Knowing that I had recently been down there and left that door open, I told my sister to sit on the top of the stairs and watch the door, to be sure that nobody came out, while I retrieved my father's shotgun. I locked and loaded and walked quietly down the stairs. At this point, I was sure the wind had just slammed the door shut when the furnace kicked in, or something stupid like that. But this bathroom was mostly used for keeping our dogs in, since no one was home. In case they had an accident, at least it would be on a tiled surface, since they didn't like being locked up. They would often scratch on the doors, so it often began to wear through. The door was made of cheap thin sections of wood and hollow in the middle. So when I get to the bottom of the stairs with gun in hand, I begin pounding on the door and screaming that I have a gun and that if anyone is in there to answer, and I let them leave. No answer, so I'm sure it was just the wind. I decide it's safe to check and go and open the door. And as soon as I turn the doorknob and pull, the door is yanked from my hand and slammed shut. Now my heart is racing. My sister, seeing it from upstairs, runs and grabs the phone to call 911. Adrenaline coursing through my veins. I make a very stupid choice. I start pounding on the door hard enough to where the outside panel of this cheap wood starts to crack, all the while screaming like a madman that I'd kill whoever was in there if they didn't give themselves up at that moment. I shoved the barrel of the gun through one of the cracks that had formed from the previous pounding and threatened to fire. It's a small room that would offer no protection from a spread of a buckshot, but still no response, nor sound of anyone trying to shuffle out the way. I grab the door one more time and decide I'm going to look at the invader before pulling the trigger if need be. One hand on the door and the other grasping the shotgun ready to pull and fire, and with all my might, I open the door. At this point, the small chunk of carpet I'm standing on placed in front of the door bunches up and shifts, pulling the door out of my hands again. The would-be house invader turned out to be a piece of bloody carpet, and all I can say is thank God I didn't pull the trigger, or I'd have pumped an old shitty toilet full of lead for no other reason than a draft moving through. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, it would mean a lot if you would drop a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. Don't forget, I do post every night to have spooks waiting for you. So if that isn't a reason to subscribe and press the little bell icon, then I don't know what is. I would also want to give a big shout out today to my good friend Briefcase, who uploaded a really chilling and interesting case about a woman in France. I'd seriously suggest checking it out. So I've gone ahead and left you that link in the description and at the end of the video in order for you to take a peek. It's seriously worth your time, and it would mean a lot to me if you'd go watch it. But anyway, if there's a story that you would like to share, feel free to email me. And assuming that it has been written well, got good punctuation, paragraphing and descriptions, you'll be able to find it in a video very soon, no doubt. But anyway, for now guys, I'm going to sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.